My dear friends, on this second Sunday of Lent, in the first reading taken from the book of Genesis, we witness a reversal in the fortunes of humankind with the call of Abraham. From chapters 1 to 11 of Genesis, we witness a disastrous history of humankind that includes the original sin, the murder of Abel, the Great Flood, and the Tower of Babel. The reversal of fortunes in chapter 12, however, doesn't come easily. God asks Abram to do something incredibly difficult. He asks him to go away from his country, his extended family, and his immediate family, to a new land that he will show him. For a moment, put yourself in the shoes of Abram. Imagine having to leave everything and everyone you know and go and settle down in a place you have never heard of. Not that easy after all. Abram has to let go of all the security on which he has depended all his life and trust God to provide for the future. Abram has to take a leap of faith. A leap into the unknown future, a leap that many people would never take. And where does Abram have to go? He is not told explicitly in the beginning. Abram has only the promise of God to rely on. An unconditional promise to make him a great nation. No wonder Abram is called the father of faith. Like Abraham, all that is required of us is to go and take this leap of faith. We will never have a clear-cut picture before us, there is always a risk involved. When was the last time you took this leap of faith? Or did you prefer to play it safe instead? The second reading is taken from the second letter of St. Paul to Timothy. This letter is considered to be the farewell letter of St. Paul exhorts Timothy to remain faithful and emulate Paul in enduring suffering and shame. The gospel is all about God's power to bring life from death. When one is preaching the gospel, suffering is a given. God's power reshapes our outlook on the anguish and humiliation that accompany suffering. Just as Paul entrusted his entire life to Jesus, Timothy must faithfully guard the gospel entrusted to him. The letter's mention of death being abolished serves in encouraging Timothy to endure suffering. In the gospel taken from Matthew, we are presented with the narrative of the Transfiguration. The Greek word for transfigured is metamorphete, from which we get the word metamorphosis. We use this word to describe the change that occurs when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. The whole scene of the Transfiguration is full of allusions to the Old Testament. The reference to the high mountain recalls Elijah's encounter with God on the holy mountain. It brings to mind the revelation at Mount Sinai and the cloud of God's glory overshadowing both the mountain and the tent where Moses met with God. And it evokes Malachi chapter 4, in which there is a mention of Moses and the coming of Elijah. The text tells us that Jesus' face shone like the sun, echoing the description of Moses at Sinai after his encounter with God. Jesus is seen as the new Moses who will lead and empower the people of God. Moses represents the law and Elijah represents the prophets, signifying that Jesus is the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. Matthew tells us nothing of the content of Jesus' conversation with Moses and Elijah, but the Gospel of Luke tells us that they speak of Jesus' departure which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem, a certain reference to his passion, death, and resurrection. Peter's suggestion to build 3 dwellings or tents sounds like an attempt to freeze time and prolong the experience to avoid going down the mountain into the world again. The voice from the cloud repeats what the voice from heaven said at Jesus' baptism, highlighting the aspect of divine sonship. What lessons can we draw from the Transfiguration? First, good times are short, the mountaintop experience is brief, and Jesus and his disciples are immediately thrust back into their ministry. The story of the Transfiguration is not so much about being on the mountain but rather about walking down the mountain with Jesus into the suffering and pain of ordinary people. Many a time we desire our vacations, retreats, or outings to extend a little more, forgetting that these are only meant to help us give our best in our ministry and daily life. Second, Jesus is with us. Jesus speaks to Peter and the others, "Get up and do not be afraid." His touch is a sign of comfort and healing, and his words reassure that whatever happens next will be in God's hands, no matter how frightening the circumstances. Jesus' touch not only comforts the disciples but also brings them back into reality. Third, listen to him. God's words, "Listen to him," are essential for us who are eternally busy. There is a time for action, But there is also a time for prayer, studying the scriptures, listening, reflection, for meditation. Our actions are more likely to obtain the desired results if we first take time to listen to God. Both action and contemplation are equally important. God calls Jesus his beloved Son. Will God call us his beloved son or beloved daughter? During this Lenten season, let us strive to make that leap of faith that will help us go through this transfiguration from being a sinner to the beloved son or daughter of God. May God bless us all.